This is Nathan from RunDreamAchieve.com. Hope you're all having a great week. Should you invest in a minute mile training plan? Over the years, I've spent probably thousands of dollars, not only on personal training, personal development, self-development. I think the fact that any athlete that's serious about breaking the 5-minute mile can do themselves a huge favor by investing in a sub 5-minute mile training plan. There's numerous training plans online, whether free or paid. I definitely believe that investing in yourself will help you get to that point where you can run 4:59:59 or faster for the mile. The athletes that are trying to run a sub 5-minute mile definitely have to develop their speed. You have to have a high level of motivation in order to run a sub 5-minute mile. I do have 5-minute mile training plans on RunDreamAchieve.com, and I'm currently creating a course for athletes that want to run under 5 minutes for the mile. So definitely check RunDreamAchieve.com out in regards to that. But this video, I want to discuss some of the things that I did in order to run 4:22 for the mile. I didn't just get to sub 5 minutes. When my freshman year, I was in high school in 1992, was the first time I ran the mile. I ran it in 5:30. Got it down to 5:09 by the end of my freshman year. By the end of my sophomore year, I lowered it down to 4:38. My junior year, I ran 4:32, and by the time I graduated from high school, I ran 4:25 for the mile. So the things that I was doing over that 4-year time frame was training much faster than 5-minute mile pace. Whether that was doing repeat 200s on the track, anywhere from 27 seconds to 32 seconds per repetition, or doing long runs. It's a combination of doing a lot of things correctly in order to run a 5-minute mile. And a lot of athletes get close to breaking the sub 5-minute mile barrier, but it's a problem of being able to sustain being able to sustain the pace, but being able to handle that lactic acid buildup in the body, and being able to function correctly, both mentally and physically, because you're running at such high anaerobic efforts that it's hard. To run a sub 5-minute mile, you have to also focus on relaxation. If you look at the best runners, whether they're middle distance runners or long distance runners, they always look relaxed. But a big part of that is not only the fact that they've prepared themselves properly in training, but they've trained at paces that were much faster than 5-minute mile pace. A lot of times they're running at sub 4-minute mile pace in training in order to be able to sustain 4 laps at 75 seconds per lap 4 times in a row, and to be able to really sustain that pace, and not only sustain it, but pick up the pace in the last lap of the race. I always tell athletes, make sure that you attack on that 3rd lap, because on the 3rd lap of the mile, that's where most athletes are trying to recover and trying to relax as much as they can for that last lap. You don't want to wait until the last lap to make your move. And the mile is a very strategic race. It's a race where you're going to have athletes in the race. They're going to be throwing in surges. They're going to be, backing off the pace a little bit and throwing in a surge. To run under 5 minutes, you have to be able to average 75 seconds per lap. And not only that, you're going to need to run 74 seconds a lap to run 4:56. So you have to train at paces where you're running, if you're doing repeat mile or repeat 400s on the track, get to a point where you can do those at around 70 seconds to 72 seconds per rep. In my sub 5-minute mile training plan philosophy, the philosophy that I follow is the same philosophy I followed when I was in high school and in college, and what I learned from some of the world-class athletes that I trained with that could run under 4 minutes for the mile. And that is periodization. We focus on a specific intensity for 3 weeks, because it takes 3 to 4 weeks. It takes about 3 weeks for your body to adapt to any stress load that you're placing upon it. So you can't rush the process. You can't just jump into doing repeat 400s on the track at 70 seconds or 4:40 mile pace. It doesn't work that way. You have to start off, maybe you'll need to start off at around 78 to 79 seconds per rep for those 400s. Do that for 3 weeks. then jump into doing them at 74 to 75 seconds per rep. Do that for 3 weeks, then focus on 71 to 72 seconds per rep. So it's a process that you have to follow. You can't just immediately jump into doing those hard anaerobic workouts quickly. So, and that's kind of the philosophy that I focus on in building my courses and in my training plans on RunDreamAchieve.com. There's a plan in place. You focus on doing a 16-week block of preparation where you know, again, 4 months is plenty of time to train for a sub 5-minute mile or a sub 3-hour marathon or sub 5-hour marathon, or maybe you're trying to run under an hour and 30 minutes for the half marathon. 4 months is plenty of time. But again, it's how you set up your training. It's again, doing the fundamentals, following the fundamentals, it's not just focusing on the hard anaerobic workouts on the track or on the roads. It's those easy runs, making sure you're paying attention to your recovery, because a sub 5-minute mile is not only extremely aggressive, explosive type time, but you have to focus on running very easy and relaxed on those easy days, so that again, those hard anaerobic workouts you're doing is definitely creating micro tears in your muscles after those hard workouts, where you're building up so much lactic acid buildup that you have to pay attention to protein intake, making sure that you're paying attention to nutrition and recovery, and so that your muscles can recover from those hard tempo runs that you're doing, that you need to do in order to run sub 5 minutes for the mile. Your tempo runs don't have to be extremely long, especially for the mile, as opposed to like the half marathon or marathon. But I would recommend doing tempo runs of anywhere from 4 to 5 miles in length to get to a point and do those tempo runs right around, you know, when you're very fit. This is again, when you're very fit, right around like 5:30 to 5:35 mile pace. So again, think of it this way: if you're doing 4 to 5 miles at 5:30 to 5:35 mile pace, you're tripling, you know, or doing long runs or tempo runs much farther than you're trying to race at. So you're doing, if you can do 4 to 5 miles at 5:30, 5:35 mile pace, how strong are you going to be at doing 1 mile at 4:59 mile pace or sub 5 minute mile pace? It's going to make you very strong. As long as you're doing a combination of training well below goal race pace. So in your case, you're trying to run 4:59.59. So do that 1 VO2 max workout per week, which is how I've also implemented in the training plans and in the running courses on RunDreamAchieve.com. We focus on spending a little bit of time each week training well below goal race pace, so that you get that race pace to feel more in control. It's not so aggressive. You're not redlining so early on in your race. You want to get to a point where you can sustain that pace more efficiently than your competition. And so you have to be smart mentally as well as physically in your preparation in order to run 4:59.59 for the mile. This is an extremely difficult, tough time that a lot of athletes take several years and sometimes don't ever achieve. And it's not on account of they simply don't have what it takes. Sometimes it's just a matter of they needed to spend a few more years or a few more months. Sometimes it was just one race away from breaking that 5-minute mile, and they either quit or they either just said, hey, this isn't my event, and maybe I need to focus on another event, a longer event. And maybe that was a smarter decision on their part, because there's a lot of athletes that have more slow twitch muscle fibers in terms of their physiological buildup or their physiological makeup. They have far more slow twitch muscle fibers than fast twitch muscle fibers, and they're simply better athletes at, say, the 10K, the half marathon, or the marathon rather than the mile. You know, even looking back at my career, I didn't quite have the leg speed to break a sub 4-minute mile. I did run 4:22, so I understand what it takes to run a sub 5-minute mile and what you need to do in order to set up your sub 5-minute mile training plan in order to run 4:59.59. There's no guarantees, but I think if you set up your training properly and you do what sub 5-minute milers do, you're going to set yourself up for success. Okay, it's not a overnight thing where you can just immediately run 4:59.59. It's a process that takes oftentimes several years in order to run 4:59. I think, and it also depends on your capability. There are some athletes that are already down to say 5'10", or maybe they're at 5'20" or 5'40". Obviously, the closer you are to running a sub 5-minute mile, the better. But can you, if you're currently at 6 minutes, can you run 4:59? Yes, you can do it. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take. I always say the faster you're training, the faster you're going after a specific time, the faster time you're going after, the more that's going to be required out of you. And a lot of times that takes an extreme amount of tenacity and drive and focus in order to run fast times for the mile or the 10K or the 5K or the marathon. You have to have an extreme amount of motivation, and you have to train smarter rather than harder. I can't reiterate this enough. You want to use leverage when it comes to running middle distance to long distance events. Leverage simply means doing more with less. So training harder is not necessarily going to get you better results. There are people around the world that work their tails off, that work hard, that are living paycheck to paycheck. Okay, and there are smarter ways to generate income, but it's again, using leverage is the way to is what successful people do in order to get better results by working less rather than harder. So that's really another concept of what I try to share with the videos here on RunDreamAchieve.com, and as well as on the website. And I also have a website called NutritionGeeks.com where I talk about business and how to generate income and to work smarter rather than harder. I think that's very important because you have to get beyond thinking the norm. You have to get and get out of your comfort zone and think outside the box in order to run a sub 5-minute mile or to do anything outside of the norm. And to do things in a different way, you have to think in a different way. You have to visualize yourself running 4:59:59 and be persistent on a daily basis doing that. You have to train mentally as well. So make sure you're not neglecting that piece of the puzzle when it comes to running sub 5 minutes for the mile. It's a very fast time. You really need to average 74 seconds per lap in order to run that 5-minute mile. At a minimum, 74 to 75 seconds. If you can run 2 laps at 74 seconds and 2 laps at 75 seconds, you got a 4:58. So I really think that if you have the tenacity and you have the willpower and you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to follow a sub 5-minute mile training plan that's going to set you up for success, if you're willing to invest in yourself and you're willing to do those necessary steps in order to run 4:59:59 or faster, you're going to do it. It's just a matter of how badly you want to do it and how long you're willing to work in order to get it. A lot of times, it can be very depressing and very disheartening to follow a plan and still not get the results. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you just need to tweak a few things in your preparation. Maybe you're running too high a percentage of your weekly volume too slow. So maybe you need to start increasing. Maybe your tempo runs are too slow. Maybe they're too short. Maybe your long runs are too slow. Maybe they're too short. So start studying. Again, I always focus on this. Whether you're trying to run a sub 5-minute mile or you're trying to run under 2 hours and 30 minutes for the marathon, or maybe you're trying to break 40 minutes for the 10K, find out what the athletes are doing that are running those times. Study what they're doing. Again, it's much easier to follow a plan, a sub 5-minute mile training plan, or maybe a sub 4-hour marathon, or maybe you're trying to run your first marathon. Study what those athletes are doing and emulate them. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to be exactly like them, but definitely focus on the fundamentals. What do you need to do in order to sustain 75 seconds or faster per lap more efficiently and being able to run that pace more efficiently than your competition and slow down less? Big parts of those are your nutrition, it's hydration, it's paying attention to proper sleep, getting away from things that are going to stress you out, following a specific taper phase where you focus dropping your volume and your intensity 10 days out rather than 3 weeks out. I recommend that, so you don't start dropping your volume and your intensity too far out where you go into your mile feeling lethargic and tired. You want to go into that race feeling fresh, recharged, and motivated in order to run 4:59:59. So I hope this video on what you need to be thinking about in order of preparing for your sub 5-minute mile Get a sub 5 minute mile training plan that's going to set you up for success, and that's going to prepare you to run under 5 minute mile pace properly and to use leverage rather than working harder. So I already know you know how to work hard, but there's a big difference between working smart and working hard. And working smart is not always taught to us. So again, working smarter and preparing better in your races comes from through trial and error. And I think the reason why I share these videos and the reason why I create these particular products is to hopefully get athletes results by, using leverage and working smarter rather than harder. We all know how to work hard, and not, like I said, harder working athletes don't always get the results. So I want you all to work smarter, get a change in the way you think, in the way you prepare, in the way you visualize yourself on a daily basis, seeing yourself running that time, getting across the finish line, whether it's on the track or on the roads, running 4:59:59 or faster for this event. So let me know in the comment section below where you're currently at for the mile. And in your races, what has caused you the biggest issue? What has caused you from running either 5:15 or maybe a 5:40 or 5:25 rather than a 4:59? Let me know in the comment section. I'm curious to see what has been your biggest problem, and let me know what you need help with, because that's really the goal here on the channel and on RunDream.